Anna, you would have been 10 whenever the war started.
Something like that.
So what's your earliest memories of wartime?
Well, we would have heard the German planes going over to Belfast.
Right. Where did you live?
Just in the country outside Portadown.
Okay.
But the farmers were very, very busy trying to provide food.
Yes.
And I was very young at the time.
I'm sure things were very scarce.
Well, on the farms, you could grow things. And we had acres of apple trees, and we lived off that. You know.
And grew your own veg and stuff. Well, whenever it came to D-Day, do you remember anything about that? About the celebration?
There was great celebration, but I was too young.
Do you remember about shortages of food or anything?
Well, that was so expected. So you just didn't think of it as shortage.
You just did the best you could. What kind of things did you do to...
Well, I was travelling. And I needed sandwiches or something. And what we did, we boiled I think it was parsnips.
Yes.
And we mashed them. And we put in the essence of
vanilla.
I made sandwiches.
Yes. I've heard of this before. What did they taste like?
I can't remember, but they must have been all right.
Remember an Anderson shelter?
Oh?
Do you remember what Anderson shelters were?
Yes.
What were they?
They were shelters that were half into the ground.
Yes.
And the other half is out over the top. In other words, you went in a way down quite far.
And when did you go in there?
Oh, when there was an air raid.
Had the supplies in there? Could you have stayed in there?
Oh yes, people would have had supplies in theirs. Yeah, and they would have had somewhere for a child to sleep and that sort of thing.
Very good. Was there any restrictions on you, or?
We were just at nights, closed in and blinds pulled and
the lights off.
And the lights off.
Mary, you had been very young during the war. What's your memories of it?
My memories was in the house, was in below the table.
Is that whenever the planes would have been going over? And would you have heard the bombs going off in Belfast?
I suppose would,
Well, do you remember anything
That's
about...
all I remember, getting below the table.
Do you? That would have been very frightening when you were a child.
My mum said get below the table because the war's on and the bombs will be coming.
Good. As
I say, the soldiers all came and stayed at our house one night. They all come down our lane in big trucks, motorbikes, everything. It was real bedlam. And they stayed up in our barn, upstairs, an old barn that they used to have in the country. And somebody took me up to see these soldiers, and one of the soldiers went to put something on my head, which I think was a radio or something. Of course, I screamed blue murder. And then I was all disappointed. The next morning they were all away again.
And do you remember things being in short supply?
Yes.
What kind of things would you had?
Well, you had dried eggs.
Right. Oh, I don't like the sound of that.
No. And you had coupons, for to buy stuff.
So today we're with Robbie Haire. Robbie's 95 years old. Robbie, you were 10 years old when the war broke out.
That is right.
What was your memory back then?
And I was at school, and as far as I know, the school never closed, and we were still going to school.
During the war, did you have to be rationed? What was that
Yes.
like?
It was very difficult for my I was here with a granny, you see. I lived with a grandma here. She was a good baker and all, there was no problem. We had a big garden, and the vegetables were in the garden. That was all right.
You still live in the same house you were born in?
I'm still living in the same house I was born in.
Did you listen to the radio during the war?
Did.
Every day to find out
There
what
was
was
a boy on there from Germany all the time, Lord Haire, they called him. And he was giving out some terrible things about the English soldiers and what they were. Terrible.
And it was D-Day special?
Oh, D-Day was very, very special. It was a public holiday and all. And thousands of people all about.
What was the atmosphere like then?
Oh, it was lovely then. It was.
Well, whenever the war was over, did that mean a lot to people then?
Well, how it did, but not a whole lot. Although it didn't bother us much in Lurgan as it did maybe in Belfast. Belfast was bad.
Yeah, it was bombed.
See, them planes must have come up. Them planes must have been flying over my house and didn't even know about it.
Did you not hear them?
No, I can't remember hearing any. But I couldn't understand the grandma had to get blackout blinds on all the windows.
Oh, no lights to be seen?
But we had no electric here.
How'd you light the house?
And lamps. And
Tele lamps?
No, big lamps.
Yeah. What was the blackout? What was the idea of the blackout, Bobby?
The blackout was when the planes were coming over from the south. They couldn't see anything on the land here.
Well, they seen like they would drop a bomb.
Oh, I'm sure they would. So they didn't drop any bombs here, but they dropped them in Belfast.
Yeah.
So they did.
The city.
They did.
Do you remember, Robbie, whenever they had to evacuate Belfast,
Yeah.
did they come as far as Lurgan? Where did they send the children to?
Only the children at school came. The parents didn't come. There might have been some parents come, but the parents didn't come to Lurgan. I know that there because any of the people that came to Lurgan, the boys, were at school with us.
Did they mix well with you, the Belfast
Oh,
children?
they did indeed. I met some great friends, so I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I did.
Can you remember any of their names?
I remember one name I knew. It comes to me. I can't remember his first name, but he was some boy. But I remember him more than any of the rest of them, so I did.
Robbie, do you remember what happened in Dunkirk?
Yes, the Germans must have put all those back right into Dunkirk. And they were bombing and killing. And well, I had a father was there. He was in the war. I had an Uncle Sam was there. He was on the airport, the division. He was at the war. He was in Dunkirk, and I had an Uncle David who was on the Air Force. They had 3 ended up in Dunkirk, and they came home safely.
They did all come home?
They all came home. Sometimes I remember the grandmother praying for them inside there. Had an old kitchen range at that time. And I heard her singing and praying for them.
That's lovely, yeah.
To bring them safely home.
Was it D-Day or V-Day you remember?
I remember them both.
You remember them both?
I do. Just remember them, nothing more now. But,
yeah.
But
Well, you're quite young.
excited.
Yeah.
Excited.
Can you remember Winston Churchill making a speech?
Oh, I do, surely. Oh, he was some man then.
Yeah.
He wasn't a great politician, like.
Good leader?
Good man during the war. Absolutely. Nobody else would have been any better.
Mm-hmm.
But as a politician, like, I don't think he was that good.
But he united the country together?
Oh, definitely. And then you brought the Americans into it.
So on D-Day, did they celebrate in Lurgan?
Oh, definitely did. The town was full.
All over the country?
Oh, aye.
Yeah.
Surely they did.
Ken and I are with Margret McCord from Anahilt to have a wee chat about her memories during the war.
I remember German planes coming and dropping bombs on Belfast. We heard the planes coming over and we saw them drop, and then the flames went up and Belfast was lit up with just, the bombs were everywhere. So they were 12 miles from Belfast, our home, and we had, when they were dropping, we had to go underneath the stairs in case the planes would come near the house and drop a bomb on our home. And later on, my brothers built a bunker in the garden in case we would have to use it. We had to have blackout blinds on, and if you hadn't a blackout blind, you made your own blind with paper, lots of paper, and so the light wouldn't get through, because if it did get through, you were fined by the police and for using the light. There was no light allowed anywhere at that time, and many people did get fined because they didn't obey the law. It was then that we were asked to take evacuees from Belfast, for they had no place to go. We had 3 properties, a dwelling house and 2 other houses, and there were about 15 or 16 of them came and lived in those houses. They were mostly grown up. There were very few children among them. They were all grown up people. My 2 brothers were in the Home Guard at that time, so they were. We went to school, we had our gas mask, we had to have it, it was compulsory, and I went to the Downshire school at that time, and we had to put our gas mask on every day going to school. We had to have it over our shoulders in case we'd have to use it. And even along the road, whenever the army were there, they would have been on guard behind the hedges with their guns, and I know it was very frightening at that time, so it was. And the teachers taught us as much as they could, and we had practices with our gas masks, and we had to go do exercises, like if anything happened, what would we do or where would we go? During the war, we had no television. I don't think many people had, but we had a dry battery radio, and it had to go into Hillsborough to Fred Johnson's to be charged, and it was brought home again. The house that I lived in had evacuees, and my brother then fixed up the radio that he could read the news to the evacuees, and they all came in, 16 of them, and they sat at the bottom of the stairs, and my brother read the news. And I think a good lot of the news came from the Belfast Telegraph. The only thing I remember was about Hitler. I can't remember it, but I remember always hearing him coming on. Or Mussolini was another one, and Hitler. And just, you know, it goes out of your mind after all these years.
Was there a train out your way at that time?
Yes, there was a train, because they brought cattle on the train for my people. It came from Belfast right up to Hillsborough and through to the Anahilt and Margret and then Dromore and then into Newry. But it was a very busy train, and it was always very useful, because whenever we were in the fields gathering potatoes, we could have told when our tea was coming or when our dinner was coming into the field, for we knew the train times.
Your late husband told you about a cookhouse down the Anahilt road.
Yes.
Whereabouts was that?
It was not far from my home on the Anahilt road. I'm the Anahilt road, Hillsborough.
Right.
And that's the Anahilt road. That's still the Anahilt road, Hillsborough.
Okay.
So it is. He said that when he was quite young, there was a hut, as they called it then, a cook hut, where they cooked all the meals for the soldiers in Ballykinler camp. Right. From Anahilt Crossroads, it was about a mile down the road on the left-hand side. In fact, I still think it's there. I never was in it, but I think it's still there. They cooked for the whole army, and then they took it into Ballykinler to them. The farmers had to grow extra food during the war. not many farmers were dairy farmers. They were usually just farmers. Always in my day would have had a few cows, a few calves. They would have had maybe sometimes even goats, and the horses. All the work was done with the horses. So there were just mixed farmers with whatever they produced was used to help people and to share with other people. It just was on a smaller scale than it is today, a much smaller scale. You were set out a sheet of paper, and it told you what you had to do to make sure the land was all used to feed the people. The soldiers would have helped in many ways. My father used to go to Belfast and gather up students, and some people were just hanging about the street corners, and gathered up about 15 or 16, and the army lorries brought them out to the farm, and they gathered potatoes for about a week and more. And then my father paid them every day, because you weren't sure whether they would come back or not, but they always came to get their money. And my mother made all the food for them. She had a big tin of corned beef, that size, and it was put into a big pot, and carrots, parsnips, and every vegetable was all mixed up for stew for them.
Right.
And they loved it.
When the war ended, what happened? What do you recall of when the war ended?
Well, all I can remember is the radio going on, and everybody cheering in the house that the war had ended. I spent that day, and my mother had walked maybe about 3 miles to a friend of my mother's, and they played the piano and all the tunes that were played during the war. They played the piano, and there was maybe 5 or 6 of us, my aunts and cousins and things, where it went. And that's how. I don't know what happened in Hillsborough. I'm not sure. The soldiers went down the Ballaghan Road in army trucks and gun carriages and one thing or another, and they had sweets, and they would have threw the sweets out. Mummy allowed us to go down to the end of the road to see them, and they were more than kind. So they were, and I can always remember somebody telling me about them leaving a box of onions along the road somewhere between Ballaghan and it must have been the Lurgan Road, and the people, because onions were very, very scarce, and then the people shared them one with the other, so they did.